Coming up next on the next Mental Health Matters with Marty show, child abuse prevention. Please stay tuned and invite someone. What's up, everybody? Hey, it's your host and none other than Martina Sellers. I am your mental health hygienist coming to you live from this beautiful day here in Southern California where the sun is always shining. So glad to see you. Hope that you've had an amazing holiday as we just celebrated Easter. Yes, and we are so excited to be back here and hope that you are doing well. Hey, let us know you are listening. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we are going to be talking about some serious things today. So please, in the DM and in the comments, please invite people in that you know need to really be a part of this wonderful, wonderful discussion in this when we're talking about child abuse and child abuse prevention, because it is a serious dilemma and challenge that is happening across this whole country. As we always say with each show, this podcast and this Facebook show is intended for educational purposes only. And what do we mean by that? We are not a substitute for mental health therapy. We are not a substitute, but we are a supplement to help you, to bring you along the way in this journey. So listen, if you are experiencing any type of psychiatric emergency, please go to your nearest urgent care or emergency room or call 911. But definitely listen, hope you're doing well out there. Dr. Timothy Brown, hey there, how are you? The man with the plan. Listen, I'm just trying to grow up and be somebody. I know that's right. Let us know you're listening, where you are listening from. But listen, as we are talking about child abuse and child abuse prevention, it is so imperative that we have the conversations. The whole point of Mental Health Matters with Marty was so that we would take the stigma away from mental health stigmas and mental health disorders in our communities, especially within our communities of color, because we don't like talking about it. And we have to stop the stinking thinking. Yes, stop the stinking thinking that surrounds us so many times when we're talking about our mental health and wellness. And let's have the conversations. In order for us to do better, we have to have the conversations. And my goal is, as we know better, we will do better so that we can speak up, so that we can speak out, so that we can live. Let me know that you are out there. Who's out there? How are you doing? Hope all is well out there for you. Listen, yes, happy belated birthday to you, my brother Tim. Hope you had a great birthday and that you are celebrating it well. But listen, let me know you're out there. So glad that you are with us and joining us. How's the weather been? We've been having beautiful weather here. And this was a great Easter this year because we were finally able to celebrate. If I think about last year with Easter, we weren't able to celebrate with loved ones, but this year we were able to do that. Karen, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Greetings. I hope the weather is better back there in Ohio because it was cold back there. So hope you all are doing well. Yes. Hey, it is my pleasure, Dr. Brown. Listen, you're doing some amazing stuff. Got to have you back on the show real soon to keep us all healthy and wealthy. But definitely, listen, I am so glad that I am not on this show alone tonight, guys, but I have joining with me. She is going to be becoming a resident host around here as well. She is amazing, young, developing and budding mental health therapist that you need to know about. And I'm so glad to be joining back to our show, none other than Miss Alana Moore.
Hello.
Hey, Alana, how are you?
Good, and excited to be here.
Wonderful. Listen, good to see you. How are you doing and how was your Easter?
It was great. We, my parents and I don't know if you do, but on Instagram, they did like a versus between the Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yes,
so they were playing their hits and stuff. We were having fun.
Listen, that versus was off the chain. You know, no old school R&B like, hey, yeah. Right, right. I love those verses because you know what? It reminds us of good times. It reminds us
Right.
of better times. And that in the midst of this pandemic, we all are struggling to keep hope alive, to bring some positive energy back into our families, into our communities. So, yes, glad that we were able to do that. So, Alana, for those who may not know who you are, tell us about yourself, what you're doing, the great work that you are doing, and yeah, all that good fun stuff.
Yeah, so I am an associate, it's APCC, so that just stands for Associate Professional Clinical Counselor, scheduled to get my license prayerfully by before the summer of this year. You know, I won't say a month,
What?
but yes, it's coming.
Come on.
My full license is coming. I'm so excited.
Yes.
I have my master's in marriage and family therapy. I love working with people. It doesn't limit me to just
Right.
families and couples, but I also work with young adults, primarily men, at a workforce
Wow.
readiness program. And I love what I do. I love the young adult population. I love the youth. I love the kids. I love families. So I just work with everybody in different.
Yes.
I work in a bunch of different capacities, but I love mental health, and I just love the creating a space. So anyway, that's a little bit who I am. And then also, I always forget, it's a newer title for me, but I am an author of a children's book that I wrote.
Yes.
So it's called ADHD, it's my superpower. So I had to throw that in there. I can't forget that.
That's right. That's right. I love it because it's so important, especially since we're talking about child abuse prevention. And I love your book. It is so amazing because we have given ADHD, attention deficit, and hypertension disorder. Right, right. Hyperactivity. I'm sorry. Hypertension is what I have. Hyperactivity disorder. We have given that a bad a representation because we think that children who are active, we naturally want to label them as bad. We naturally want to label them as being mischievous, as opposed to using, I love the title that ADHD is my superpower. What brought that about, just for those who may not have heard this story before? Because I love the story behind the writing of that book. So what is the story behind that book, Alana?
Yes. Like you said, the label of ADHD is not always positive. And so, you know, when my son entered into the elementary school system at 4, there were some challenges he was having in the classroom. And long story short, he was just being labeled at such a young age because of his behavior instead of being understood, you know? And so it just broke my heart because I don't want any child, especially my own, but any child to come home and feel like, you know, I constantly am getting in trouble, you know, I'm a burden, anything like that. I don't want any child to feel like that, especially about something that they can't control. So,
Exactly.
so that's why I was like, you know, let's point out the great things about this because that's
Yes.
not all I see. I don't just see these behaviors. I see a lot of positive behavior. Let's just
Yes.
not talk about the negative. So I really wanted to embed that into my child's head that you're
Yes.
amazing. Like you have so
Yes.
many great things about you. So when you hear ADHD, be like, yeah, I know I got ADHD. It's my superpower. You don't need
That's
to, you know,
right.
feel like mislabeled or marginalized because of it. So that's why
Yes.
I love to write it.
Alana, I so appreciate you. Miss Mildred, how are you, darling? Definitely. You have taken what we have normally labeled a negative stigma, and you said, I'm not going to focus particularly with my son, my young black son, and put this negative label on him. But I'm going to flip the script and said, yes, you may have ADHD, but it's going to be your superpower. It's your strength, and I want you to carry that and wear it like a super cape, and so that you wear that. Say, yes, so what? I have ADHD, but let me show you all the benefits that I have as a result of having ADHD and not the negative with that. How has that changed your conversations with your son and even how he views himself? Let's start there first.
Yeah, honestly, and Awesome, because every time he says ADHD or he hears that somebody else has it or
Right,
hears it
right.
being talked about, he's like, they have ADHD superpowers too? So it's only
Love
positive.
it.
It's like ADHD is a superpower. That's all he associates. Oh, if I hear ADHD, I associate it with a superpower. Or he says I
Right,
associate it with my creativity or my personality or, in good ways, in positive ways. And so
right.
my son has just such a positive view about himself. And even last night, he said something. He used a really big word, and he's like, "Yeah, I combined something." And look, and I said, "Wow, what a big word!" He goes, "Yeah, it's because I'm really smart. My mind works really well."
Love
Really.
it.
I said, "Yes." So things like that just warm my heart because my son knows who he is, and so I think that.
Right. Yeah. Imagine, Alana, if we as parents would do that with our children. Yes, you may have ADHD. Yes, you may have trouble, but look at all the things that you have that works for your mind. Thinks faster. So great, you can come up with big words. You now are smarter. That changed his whole thought process about himself because now he knows he's smart.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Hats off to you. Kudos, kudos, kudos to you. Now, has it changed even with your relationship with the teachers that teach him now?
Yeah, actually, we were blessed to have a really amazing teacher this year. And she actually always comments that he's doing so well. Like, I feel like our minds work very similarly and things like
Yes.
that. And then also, when they hear about the book too, it gives them a different perspective. And I kind of like
Yes.
to share that, not to just promote the book, but just to say, just as a little bit more about who my son is, just so you can have a little bit more, so you can identify the positives when you see them around the classroom, even because he might, have challenges with certain other things, but here's the whole
Right.
side of it so that you can not just point out the negatives. So,
Yes, I love what Gail said here. She says she learned to flip something that others use as a negative and turn it into a positive. It's also empowers him. You're absolutely right. So it empowers your son. He now can hold his head up high, not be ashamed, especially at that age when we're dealing with that whole shame and whether or not they're going to accept who they are and have pride in themselves. So you're not teaching them how to be shameful, but be
right,
proud of who they are. Because
right.
listen, I'm 2 weeks younger than Jesus, and I make lots of mistakes. If we talk about the resurrection, I almost saw it. I was just born a little late. But anyway, Alana, you are so amazing. So, what did you do over this Easter weekend? Anything special or anything? I know you were on last week and commenting. I love when you comment. That's why we read all of your comments.
Yes. Honestly, for my Easter week, for the week, this
Yes.
my son came back. He was with his dad for spring break,
Okay.
and so normally I will freak out a little bit, have some anxiety, especially because he's in a different state. Even though his dad and his family are great, it's just
Right.
the motherly anxiety that I might get from him being gone, and the what do I do with myself because 24/7
Right.
parenting is like a 24-hour job, 24/7,
Listen.
you know. So,
Listen.
so I really learned to be intentional about taking care of myself
Mm,
and spending time with myself because I need to pour into me so I can be better. And I'm like,
yes.
I need to rest, rejuvenate, things like that. So
Right.
for the last week, especially with your self care talk on Monday. That really helped me. So at the end of the week, he came home and I'm super happy, but I was also refreshed because of the week.
Good. Good. Janice, Cherie, good to see both of you out there. That is so important because we as parents, oftentimes, if we're talking about childhood prevention, one of the things that we have to learn as parents, hear me loud and clear, parents, we have to know when we've hit our limit and when we need to get rejuvenation, when we need to definitely have some self-care time, when
Right.
we need to just kind of take a step back and say, you know what? Boo boo, let's call God mommy. Let's call daddy. Let's call best friend and see if we can get because I'm at my limit and I need to take some time to rejuvenate myself in that. And so I'm so glad that you were able to take that and really not feel guilty. How was that? Because I know I'm a single parent again as well with my 5-year-old that I definitely have adopted. But sometimes I was feeling guilty that I was tired. How do we deal with that as parents? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I had to change the narrative in my head of like feeling bad for feeling tired because I'm like,
Yes.
well, just like he's tired at the end of his day, at the end of a school day, and after he does his
Right.
extracurriculars, I'm like, I'm a human, I'm tired,
Right.
but it's not he's making me tired, it's just my responsibility and my role. It's not
Yes.
him causing it, and I had to separate that. I'm like, well, because I used to feel bad thinking like, well, I'm tired because my child's making me tired. I'm like, no, it's not him. It's just the responsibility of the world.
Right.
So I had to
Right.
also say self-care and filling myself up and being rested makes me
Yes.
a more fun parent, a more present parent, a more active parent, a more, involved. It just makes everything better when you have rest and you spend time
Yes.
for yourself. Because at the end of the day, someone told me when your child grows up and is out of the house, what do you have for you? What do you have left, for
Right.
yourself?
Right.
And so
Right.
I really thought about that, and I'm like, yeah, I really do need to fill me up, and I need to be as strong as I can be for my son. And so if I'm
Yes.
tired, I need to be able to admit that and say, I need to sleep a little bit. I just need a day of rest,
Yes. Let's
and that's
let's
okay.
Yeah, Cherie said it this way: says I adopted my son 2 years ago, and I'm tired. Listen, we can listen, parents, and share with us what you're going through. Those of you who are deaf, share with us what you're going through. Thank you for sharing that, Cherie. That we are tired, and it's okay that sometimes you are tired. We have to stop feeling guilty. Listen, kids take a lot of work. It takes a lot of work just to be a parent. And during this pandemic, we had to be parents, we had to be school teachers, we had to be disciplinarians, we had to be all these things. And Alana, as I was studying for today and getting ready for this, one of the alarming things that reports that has come out here recently that came out at the end of in December of last year about child abuse and reporting and neglect with that. The CDC said this: although child abuse reporting has decreased drastically, of course, because of the stay-at-home orders, the amount of abuse that has been abuse, and also I'm going to get the part right. Here it is. I'm going to read this. A CDC report says during the COVID-19 pandemic, the total number of emergency department visits related to child abuse and neglect, the total number of emergency visits may have decreased, but the percentages of that such of hospitalization increased. That's scary.
Yeah.
The amount of abuse and the reporting of the abuse decrease, but the amount of kids being hospitalized because of abuse and neglect has drastically increased because of the pandemic. We have to talk about this, and we got to get parents and children some relief.
Right.
That shook me at my core.
Yeah.
That meant these kids are being physically hurt.
Right.
And that's scary. And that definitely. Janice says this. Janice, let's put up Janice. Janice says it's very important to take time to rejuvenate and not allowing others to shame you because you want to yourself. Right? Because that's so true. That is so true. But we have to talk about this and get that out there because although, listen, during this pandemic, we've had heightened stress. We've had school closures. We've had loss of income. We've had social isolation. All of these things result in high stress, high anxiety, high depression, high PTSD, high worry, all these things. And the persons we most take it out on as adults, we take it out on our kids. And that's where we have to have these discussions so that we do not continue in that horrible and negative vein. People, we need help. And we want to, and that's why I'm so glad, Alana, you said yes, to have this conversation with our people here today so that we can start taking time. Here's a couple other things that I wanted to read as well. Do you know that statistics say 1 in 4 children have experienced some sort of abuse or neglect at some point in their lives? That 1 in 4 children. So you take a room of 4 kids, one out of those 4 have been abused or neglected at some point in their lives. That's scary.
Super scary.
Yes.
And now what you were reading about the numbers too, and the hospitalizations, what breaks my heart even more is that because of the pandemic and because of them being inside, they didn't have school teachers, counselors, and workers to be able to report that, to be able to help save that, or prevent that from happening even more. And that breaks my heart.
I agree. We our kids weren't going to church events. They weren't going to the community centers. They weren't going to school. They weren't seeing the doctors. They weren't seeing their therapists a lot of times. They weren't seeing the dentists. They weren't seeing their coaches. All these things, because these are mandated reporters, so weren't seeing their social workers. I know that even for group homes, that kids were not being definitely seen and as regularly as they should have been because of this pandemic. I love this. As more often than not, children who are removed from their homes due to difficult circumstances are reunified with their parents, and this is always the number one goal in doing that. But we have to be careful, too, that we've done the proper healing with this as well. Can we look at Gail's? Yes, Gail, you're amazing, darling. Says, this is an alarming study. Many parents don't understand how to deal with their stress and trauma. We usually use aggression in some form as behavior modification. Gail, you're talking to us now, instead of using some other tools to help children and their parents. That is so true, Gail. It is so true. We have to find different ways of definitely helping out our children.
Yeah, and can I make a comment?
Oh, of course. Go right ahead.
So I was just thinking about this today, and I'm like, parents, they don't put a boundary on, their trauma. It's like trauma has no boundary for them. So if they experience trauma, their response to it, it's like even though it's their children, there's no boundary that's placed. I'm like, wait, this is my child. I'm responding to my child the way I would, to my abuser or to whatever happened to me. And so then, the responses to their child, and they're affecting a complete generation of people, without realizing it. Sometimes they're just affecting their child's whole well-being.
Exactly.
So now the child has an adverse childhood experience because of the parents' trauma, and there's just no boundary on it. It's just parents just reacting, then the child learns to just react, and it's just kind of cyclical. So
yes, I love it. You slid that ACEs in there on us.
Yes.
But for those who don't know what the ACEs is, the adverse childhood experiences, what is ACEs, and why is that so important?
So adverse childhood experiences is like what you were saying, like the statistics of, abuse or any childhood experience that could have affected, your mental health in any way. And so most of us, they say, have at least 2 or more ACEs, and the more adverse childhood experiences that we have, the more trauma that we have, and the more healing that needs to be done. But I think what happens is a lot of people carry all of these, they could have 6 ACEs, 6 different childhood. You could have been sexually abused or experienced violence or, environmental, trauma, gangs, things like that. And they carry all of that, but they don't know what to do with it. It's just, they either become numb or angry or guarded, what you've been affected by so that you can heal from it.
I love that. Robin McCall says, say that. She's one of our trainers here that has trained all of us on the whole ACEs training and everything. So you are in her wheelhouse when you say all that. But it's so important. And we cannot be ashamed of the traumas that we have experienced. And that's part of the problem too. We don't want to admit, I have to admit, I've experienced some trauma in my life. Growing up in a domestic violent household and seeing that for 16 years, I would be not a good therapist if I don't recognize that I had to deal with a lot of that while growing up, so that I make sure that I'm not transferring and doing a lot of counter transference in my sessions with that as well. So a lot of times I will, when those situations come, I'm being clear with my patients. Growing up as a witness to domestic violence in that. And so I'm very sensitive when it comes to child abuse prevention in that as well, because that could be considered neglect, that could be considered PTSD, that could have been considered a reason why I should have been possibly removed from my home in that. And that is some very important, and I'm not ashamed of that, because that had nothing to do with me. That had to do with some unaddressed trauma that my father had, that he felt the only way that he knew how to deal with his own emotions was to be physical towards my mother in that. But we cannot be ashamed of that and have those conversations.
Right.
In that. So Gail says, Gail, you are on. She says, yes, that is the first step, is acknowledging our own trauma is the first step towards healing. It is.
Exactly. Yes.
It absolutely is in that. Here's what I want to, some of the leading risk factors as it pertains to abuse and childhood abuse are some of the following. Poverty. Poverty is an indicator that there could be, that we have to be more aware that abuse could take place. Now, that's not saying that childhood abuse does not happen in wealthy families. Hear me when I'm saying that, because Alana, we know it happens in some of these wealthy families as well. Listen, but poverty can be an indicator of that, because listen, when my money get funny, I know how funny acting I get. Come on, somebody. Yes. Some of the other factors that include substance abuse. We have to look at substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, all of those things. That is definitely one of the things we have to look at, substance abuse. We have to look at mental health and generational child abuse within the family as well. Environment is huge. John, come on. John, I should have had you on here today too, but I know you got to get into supervision. John, yes, very, very, very powerful. With that, environment is so key. Environment, like John said, is huge in helping us to make sure if you have a positive environment, the likelihood of that is has decreased drastically, as opposed to having a stressful home environment and where everyone is stressed. If mom is stressed, that can lead to abuse. If dad is stressed, it doesn't matter. We have to make auntie, caregivers, whatever in that. And just because you're adopted or at grandma's house or all those things, it doesn't mean that child abuse cannot and does not happen.
And I wanted to say something to what you were saying about, like, because you were naming different, factors like poverty and, it happening in your childhood, like child abuse and things like that. Well, all of that, they usually say violence occurs because of people wanting power and control. And really because they feel a loss of control financially, they feel a loss of control emotionally, they went through their own trauma, so they exert control, they try to feel in control, and that's usually, where it comes from. Unfortunately.
Yes. Listen, I told y'all Alana was amazing. Y'all better watch out. She is up and coming. Not up and coming. She is already here on the scene. But you're so right. Oftentimes, and I'll say it from this way, from men, when we lose power or feel our power is threatened, because men have not learned how to properly, in most cases, now I'm saying this in generalizations, y'all, have not learned how to properly express hurt, express fear, express emotions. So it comes out negatively and oftentimes in forms of abuse, anger, or whatever that might be. If the parents have a history of suffering child abuse, could be a factor as well. You're right. A history of suffering from child abuse. Jerron, you're absolutely right with that. So those are all the things, the factors that we would definitely look at in our adverse childhood experiences reports and those type of things as well. Have you experienced abuse? Have you witnessed abuse? Have you experienced alcoholism? Have you been a victim of substance abuse? All those type of things are so important because they can be indicators of abuse or childhood abuse in that as well.
Right.
Yes, with that. Miss Tamara Brooks, cousin, what's going on, darling? Let's look at what she has to say. So adults who were abused when they were children may abuse their own children. And when it's like a generation, that's exactly right. It can be, you do what I've learned. Yes, Nikki, you're absolutely right in that. It is absolutely that. And that's one of the indicators we definitely talked about when we're having generational and abuse that now becomes cyclical that we have to be aware of as well. Alana, we prepared some key tips that we would like to share. Can we just kind of alternate? So here's some child abuse prevention guidelines that we want to share with you. Look, good people, put some people in the memo section because we want to help as many people as possible in this. And then host a party with us. Number one, never discipline your child when your anger is out of control. Come on. Don't discipline. Listen, sometimes we need to take a time out with it. I do it with couples all the time. I'm sure when we say, let's throw out a safe word. When our anger is so high till we can no longer think rationally. If we have, I'm going to say it right, Daryl, Apple Watches as opposed to an iWatch. Apple Watches. Alana, and Gottman says this when it comes to relationships. If your heartbeat gets to be over 120, you no longer have the ability to process rationally. So when you're angry, you have your Apple Watch on and check that little heart thing and make sure if your heart rate is above 120 beats per minute, you need a timeout.
Yes.
You need to go to your corner. Ding, 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 ding. Time out. I need to get my thoughts together. I need to breathe deeply because if we're too, I use the Holt theory, too hungry, too angry, too lonely, too tired. Those are not the time to be doing such things as disciplining your children. Because you're going to discipline them and hurt them because you're going to do it out of frustration, out of anger, out of that mood. That is only temporary, that could cause permanent and long-lasting damage. So number one, never discipline your child out of your anger when your anger is out of control. Anything you want to add to that too, Alana?
Yes, because anger is very self-seeking. So it becomes self-seeking and you don't realize, like you said, there's a certain point where you're not being rational anymore. And then you just become self-seeking. Anger wants what it wants. It's consuming, right? But discipline is intended to help to build up the child. And so then it doesn't become discipline anymore. If you're angry, think about what you want your child to gain from that moment in time. And if your anger is speaking something completely different, then you just need to take a time out. Because anger, what ends up happening is you intend to discipline and build them up, but you really tear them down because you're allowing your anger to speak, for you. And then it consumes both of you. Y'all are both angry.
Right.
So you just need to take some time to come back.
Listen, girl, you told that one. That's good. Because the whole point of discipline is to teach. And now when we move from discipline to now being punitive and punish, that's when we have to make sure, yes, teach the people. We're trying to teach the people. We are in that. So we have to make sure that we are in the discipline mode to teach and not the punitive mode to punish. Yes, speak on it. Just had to give myself an adult time out and count to 10. That's good, cousin. If you were dealing with my child who has Down syndrome, can we just take a sidebar with that? Especially for our children who have special needs, we have to show more grace. We definitely have a stronger capacity of showing love because at that moment they may not have the cognitive ability to process what you are saying. And shout out to my cousins, shout out to all of our parents and guardians who are definitely raising children who have special needs, because that's a whole nother type of love that you have to display to the child. And although their actions might make you angry, we have to give yourself, I love it, Nikki, she said she had to give herself a time out and count to 10.
Right.
And after you, let me show this, after you count to 10 forward, count to 10 backwards as well. 10, 9, 8, help me Jesus, 7, come on Holy Ghost, 6, you're going to come through Father, 5, come on, I feel it coming, 4,
Yes.
yes, joy's coming, 3, for the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, 2, right? Talk yourself through it in that, whatever it takes to help you through that, because that's what it's about. It's about for discipline purposes and not punitive damages.
And you're modeling too. I just wanted to say with that counting, you're modeling that. So you're like wanting your child to emotionally regulate in the way of they count and they take a break. But how can we expect them to do that when we're yelling, screaming, and doing all this other kind of stuff? But when we take breaks and we show them they will do the same, and so that's why that's also so important. So I love the counting.
Yes, and my daughter actually had to tell me one day, Daddy, breathe. I'm like, okay. Right. Because you're right. When we model that for our children, they then in turn can also remind us to model that too. Alana, you want to take the next one for us, please?
Yes, participate in your child's activities and get to know your child's friends. This is a big one. This is really big. I'm very big on this. Involvement, being very involved, being at those play dates, talking to those parents, not just the high and by, but really getting to know the parents, getting to know the children that they're hanging out with, and then getting to know the things that they're engaged in. Because, I mean, from my perspective on involvement, your child feels so much more, there's so much more of a parent-child connection when you are that involved in your child's activities and you know your child's friends. And also for safety reasons, you want to know exactly what your child is into and who your child is around and the parents.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. I love that, especially as we participate in our children's activities. What we're doing, we're also creating a natural bond.
Right.
We're also creating that trust. So now when we're being disciplinarian, they're going to feel and receive that better as opposed to when you're not being a part of that. So you can say, baby girl, remember when I was with you? Now listen, we can have fun, but if we're going to continue, I need you to listen to what I'm saying. Right. So as a result of that, you've built that trust. You've established a relationship that is not, again, punitive, but definitely one that is disciplinary, so that you're teaching them and showing love in that as well. And then it's something amazing when you feel that your parents also know your friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And especially when they speak to you, hey, Mrs. Moore, how are you?
Yeah.
Hey, that's my schoolmate's mom. Hey, he's the kid with the superpowers.
That's a great thing.
Yes, Dr. Timothy Brown says it this way. He says, establish that relationship to teach and show love. Yes, so important with that. Yes, so again, participate in your child's activity and get to know your child's friend. Number 3, never leave your child unattended, especially in the car. Woo! Come on, somebody. Yes, don't leave them unattended, especially when you're at the park. Kids can get out of your sight like this. So that means we got to be paying attention. So sometimes, y'all, parents, I'm equally as guilty. Sometimes we got to put this down. Trust me, your social media status ain't changed that much where you need to be looking at it 24/7. Let's take some time to spend with our children mentally, physically, and emotionally. Let me say that again. Let's not leave your child unattended, not only physically, don't leave them unattended mentally. Don't leave them unattended psychologically, and definitely don't leave them unattended emotionally. They need to know there's a connection. Yes. Anything you want to add on to that, Alana?
Yes. And first, when we were talking about this and I looked at this, of course, I'm thinking of safety. Don't leave your child unattended everywhere. Be very vigilant. But I love that you said the emotional and mental part, because there was an article that said parents actually, speaking of the word unattended, they said they spend undivided attention less than 10 minutes with their child a day. And I'm like, only 10 minutes?
Wow.
Parents spend, because of the technology, we're cooking, we're doing other things. And are we realizing that we're actually not giving our undivided attention? So I love that you
Wow.
said, don't leave them unattended. Like, give your undivided attention to your children in all ways, not just safety wise, but
Yes.
emotionally, mentally, because the fact that a lot of children go with our undivided attention for less than
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes of the day.
Wow.
That was alarming to me. I'm like, wow. And then I had to pay attention to myself. I'm like, am I doing too much? I need to sit down
Listen,
and pay attention.
yes. As you just said that, I'm just going, oh my goodness, how much time am I spending on my kid? Am I, guilt. Right, because we are so divided in so many things that we have to learn to put this down. We have to learn to turn off the TV. It says you model to them how to with people when you use technology around them. Oh, Lachey, you talking to us. You're talking to us. You're absolutely right. So we have to teach them to model the right behaviors and what we
Right.
want from them. So don't leave them unattended, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Love
Right.
that. Number 4, go ahead, Alana.
I love this one too. Teach your child how to use their voice to allow them to prevent abuse in their own life. I absolutely love this.
Yes.
Empower your child to speak up and speak out, as you can
Come
say.
on.
Empower them. I mean, really
Yes.
empower them to speak. And then also yesterday, we were joking around as a family, but they were
Mm-hmm.
Josiah, keep a secret or something like that. And I said, no, we don't keep secrets. And they're like, oh no,
Right.
so teach them, do not keep secrets, use your voice when you need to, and empower them to speak up about, whatever is on their mind and how they feel and things like that. So
Yes.
so important. Building up self-confidence is so important because you do not want your child to be timid, especially when they're in a challenging situation or a difficult situation. You want them to be able to
Yes.
and say no, and place boundaries and things like that. And so empowering them and pouring into them
That
is
is
going to
so
build their
good.
confidence, speak out when they need to. So I love this one.
Yes, yes. What I'm going to do, y'all, I'm going to post these guidelines in the section as well. Daryl, is that okay? Look, I didn't ask my executive because he'll get on me later. So I'm going to post these in here as we're saying that. That's really good. Number 5, Daryl, go ahead and post that. Number 5, ask questions. For example, when your child tells you he or she doesn't want to be with someone, this could be a red flag. Hello? Hello? Listen, everyone. Ask questions. Why don't you want to be with them anymore? Did they do something? Well, what's happening? Why are you feeling nervous? Ask the questions. Stop forcing our children to be around people they are no longer comfortable with. Let me say that again. Stop forcing our children to be around people that they are no longer comfortable with. Ask the questions. Pay attention. They're trying to tell you in their own voice that something is going on. Pay attention to them. Alana, speak to that for me. Woo!
Yes. Trust your child's intuition. Children are
Yes.
very intuitive. So if they're saying something, it's not just going to be out of nowhere.
Right.
If they're saying they feel uncomfortable, trust that. And ask.
Yes.
Okay, what happened? Tell me what happened. Which goes to number 4. Teach your child to speak up. And not be afraid to tell you that. And then it goes to number 3, creating that connection with them. So when you have a connection with your child and you teach them to speak up, then when you do ask questions, they'll feel safe enough to tell you, which they should. And when they do feel
Right.
safe enough to tell you, please listen. Please pay
Yes.
attention.
That is so important that we do pay attention to those things because we have had too many of our people, our children, who've fallen under molestation, who's fallen under sexual abuse, because April is also Sexual Abuse Awareness Month, because we did not pay attention to the signs. Listen, they're trying to tell you they don't want to be with Ray Ray and them. Because Uncle Ray Ray, that play uncle, has done some abusive things to them. Pay attention. Listen, we ain't gonna just blame Ray Ray. We're gonna blame Raynisha as well. Pay attention, because he don't want to spend time with Raynisha either, because them babysitters will abuse our children as well if we're not careful. Pay attention. How do we prevent child abuse? By paying attention to our children. So ask the questions. Ask the right questions. And when they're telling you something, ask. Thank you. Go ahead, number 6.
Listen to them and believe what they say. Yes, yes, believe them. I've seen, disheartening in so many situations where a child will say something or say, "I told my mom," or "I told my dad," but they didn't believe me, or every time I tell them, they're like, "Oh yeah," you brush it off.
Right.
Believe your children what they're telling you. It's coming from somewhere. It's coming from somewhere, and most children are not going to make things up like that. So believe them. I always go with the instinct of believing my child and what he's telling me. So
and because you believed your son, I'm going to go back to your book, because you believed him, and how that empowered him, because he knows, if no one else will believe me, mommy and daddy can. And mommy and daddy will. If no one else believes me, I have a safe place to go to share my story, to share my experience, and they're going to believe me. Why is that so important?
It's super important, because I really just want to touch on the point that we all want to feel heard, seen and heard. And if we're not seen and heard, especially in our childhood, and that doesn't get poured into, they're going to try to use their voice or try to be heard in a lot of different ways. That's why we get the cutting. That's why we get the suicide. That's why they're trying to be seen and heard. So we, as our parents, their first, attachment figures, we need to be the ones to see into them, and they don't need to go to all these other escape routes to feel seen and heard. We should be that for them. And I really want to emphasize how important that is.
Thank you, Alana. That's right. And it ties into number 7. Number 7 says this: be aware of changes in your child's behavior or attitude and inquire about it. In other words, if you see a change in attitude, if you see a change in behavior, ask questions. It goes back to number 5. Ask questions again. Wait a minute. Baby boy, you used to do this. Why not? Why aren't you doing that anymore? Baby girl, what has changed? Ask questions. Ask questions. Definitely. Notice, but Alana, I'm going to say this. You can only be aware of changes in behaviors and attitudes if you know your child.
Right.
If you don't know them and you don't spend any time with them, you won't notice the differences in their behaviors. Come on, I'm talking now.
Right. And it's sad, because you're saying situations that I have seen multiple times when I'm working in the background and I'm working with families. It is disheartening to hear, like, okay, so tell me what you've seen in the home, and they're like, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't pay attention. I'm busy, or and it is alarming, because all of these things are going unnoticed, or falling under the radar, and you want to be so connected to your child to where you can see the slightest change in their behavior. Oh wait, you're talking a little bit less today. You're a little bit more tired lately. What's going on? So that is very important.
Excellent. Let's take the next one, Alana. Number 8.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine.
Teach your child what to do if you and your child become separated while away from home. That's very, very good. A signal, a word, a go-to. Who to go to, especially if they're in the store.
That's good.
You go to, this is what you say, right? And then what I'm really big on doing is I've already taught my son, his phone number and things like that. So if they need to call me, they can, things like that. But I always teach them, be loud, scream. If you're in an environment where I'm not with you and there's not a lot of people around and someone's, telling you something like, come with me, you scream, you yell,
Oh, that's good.
And so definitely, and then landmarks too, I always say,
oh, that's good.
This is where you go. And so I think this is super important, because they do need to know, what if that does happen? They need to know where to go. Yeah.
And all of that, again, y'all, we're talking about preventing childhood abuse. Childhood abuse prevention, which is so good. Number 9, Daryl. Number 9, teach your child the correct names of his or her body parts. Come on. We got to teach them the name of their body part, because if they are being abused, we don't want them to say, well, down there. We want them to show, where are you being abused at? What body parts? Have age-appropriate discussions with your children. Are they bothering you? Are they touching you in inappropriate places? And have them, where are they touching you? Why are they, so they teach them to say, and then I'm going to say this too, Alana, teach them that they don't have to be ashamed of identifying that particular body part as well. We often want to put shame to it, and that's why we have so many challenges. Listen, we are already created man, female, and we cannot be ashamed of that. We have to teach them how to love who they are and why they were created that way, in that way as well, but not have them be ashamed, and to teach them the proper identification of their body parts.
Exactly. And I think that's so important. I remember when my son was 3 or about to turn 3, and I was teaching him, this is what this is. This is the penis, and I have to, because it's just the body, I said too, these are the people who are supposed to, mommy, daddy, the doctor, that's it. What I mean? Like, nobody else, if anybody else is asking to see this, you let me know,
Exactly.
And so he would always say, nobody's supposed to touch my penis. And I said, good. Keep that to yourself, This is private. This is yours. It belongs to you.
That's right.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Love that. Okay, number 10.
Be alert for any talk that reveals premature sexual understanding. I think that is very, very good. And again, I've experienced this before, 8, 9, 10 years old, and you're sexualizing things, or, you have overly sexual gestures, behavior, jokes, right? That you really need to be alert of that. That's too young. That means that there's some sort of exposure, to it in some way. And you have to inquire about, what did you see that made you say that? What did you hear that made you say that? Because that's too young to be talking about that. So it's usually due to an exposure of something. It could be music that they heard, but it could also be things that they saw, or something that somebody did to them that is making them say that.
Exactly. And that's why we have these conversations. That's why you pay attention, so that when you're seeing that, so we can get to the root of it a lot sooner, and we can prevent those things from happening when we take away the shame and create the trust, create the love, create the right atmosphere for our children to be safe, and talk to our parents, talk to their parents about what is going on. Alana, I'm loving this conversation, and thank you so much. As we're rushing to a close, because I want to get these last ones too. Number 11, pay attention. Woo! I can't say this enough. Pay attention, parents, when someone shows greater than normal interest in your child. When it's not healthy. You're like, why are you paying attention that much to my child? What's going on? Pull them aside. Have a conversation. Hey, what's going on? You're not the godparent.
Yes.
What's happening?
Right.
Why is that so important, Alana? That yours definitely, as a parent, is that so important, even from your perspective?
And I've had this happen a long time ago. My child was very young. It's when somebody has a fixation on your child, it's alarming, and there's a reason for it. Why are you so fixated on you being attached to my child? What is it for? What is the intent? Because it's not, like you said, you're not the godparent or the parent or the auntie or whatever. So it's like, what is the intent that you have? And you really need to, as the parent, pay attention of, like, there's something in them that wants a connection to my child, but this is a grown adult. So what is the reason, and that's why another thing, people always say, you don't leave your child with everybody. Come
on. You sure enough don't.
Especially when they're doing this behavior, because you never know what's going on or what their intentions are.
Right. Right. So definitely pay attention, because the child doesn't have enough discernment to know who's being genuine and who's not. That's our role as the parent or provider or the guardian for that. Jerron says it this way, real quick. Daryl says it demonstrates that someone has an opportunity and possibly inappropriate fixation on children. Huge red flag. Totally agree with you, Jerron. And number 12, our last one for today.
This is good. Make certain your child's school or daycare center will release him or her only to you or someone you officially designate. That is huge.
Yes. Isn't
That
that huge?
you have yourself and a list of people that that they ask you to put that that can be designated.
Right.
And if it's not that person, what I've liked before, I've had somebody that wasn't on the list pick up my child, and they're like, who's this? And I'm like, thank you for asking, because
Yes.
I forgot about
Yes. Right.
make sure that the schools will do that, that they're on that list, that they have ID, and that your child can identify who they are, by the
That
way.
part. That
So,
part. I love it
so
when I say, "Who is this?" That is so and so. And how do you know them? All
right.
of that. Yes, that is so good. That is so good. Alana, I can't thank you enough for helping me out today with doing this prevention, because April again is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I thought it was so great, and this was perfect, you coming on here and being an advocate for children's rights and all that you do. So Alana, how can our listeners stay in touch with you, and how can they order your book?
Yes. So my Facebook is just my name, Alana Moore, but my book page is called ADHD is My Superpower. My Instagram is called
Ooh.
No More Chains. So my last name is Moore, so it's just No More Chains, one word. And then the way you can get a hold of my book is on Amazon.
Whoop.
The link is on my ADHD is My Superpower page. It's on my Facebook page. You can find it on my Instagram. And hope you can take a look at that if you have a chance.
Awesome, awesome. Alana, thank you so much again for sharing this with me. I know that you're very passionate about young people, especially our children, being the super mom that you are and raising a super kid as well. I can't thank you enough for joining us on this very, very dynamic and important topic about how do we prevent child abuse in our communities, especially in our communities of color, where we always have that saying, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Jerron, that's right. Go buy Alana's book. That's what we want to push.
Thank you.
Go buy. Let's support amazing young Black writers and authors, because that can help someone. Listen, buy them as gifts, buy them as graduation gifts, buy them wherever, because we got preschool graduations coming up, all that. We got it. So they need to be, and that book needs to be in every elementary school across America, because it is so powerful. So Alana, thank you again for coming up today on here.
Thank
As
you.
always, it is always my pleasure. You'll be back, as always, y'all. And we're talking about childhood prevention and what that looks like. Again, my name is Martina Sellers, your mental health hygienist. Please check out more about childhood prevention and child abuse prevention and how we can do that by checking out our Facebook, of course, on Facebook. Please check out my Instagram page, my YouTube page, and most importantly, please listen to my podcast, which is Mental Health Matters with Marty podcast. And on it, you will definitely find more episodes on there to support you in your mental health journey to health and wellness. And if you have not been subscribing to us, please subscribe. If you are an Apple listener, please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. Also become an iMatter member by texting iMatter to 855-717-1272. Again, that's 855-717-1272. Again, 1 in every 4 child experience some sort of mental health abuse and physical abuse and or neglect. Let's change those numbers around. Let's make no child has to live in an abusive environment. No child is going to be neglected. Why? Because we are speaking up and we are speaking out. So let's not have our children to continue to suffer in silence in this shadow of shame during this pandemic. But as always, we want you to speak up. We want you to speak out. We want you to live. But more importantly, we want you to always to enjoy your life. See you next week.